but the summoning ritual. High Priest Zexhai stood at the center of the crystalline summoning chamber, his 6 arms weaving intricate patterns through the air as purple energy crackled around his elongated fingers. The other members of the Vorthak Council watched nervously from their floating platforms, their insectoid eyes reflecting the dancing lights of the ritual circle. "Are you certain this will work?" asked Council Member Theiss, her mandibles clicking anxiously. "We have never attempted to summon warriors from such a distant realm." Zexhai's confidence never wavered as he continued the ancient chant. "The texts are clear. We seek the most peaceful species in the galaxy, one that has never known true conflict. They will serve as perfect soldiers, obedient, gentle, and easily controlled. The humans of Terra Prime are said to be gardeners and poets, nothing more." The Vorthak Empire had been losing the war against the brutal Kethmoran hordes for 3 solar cycles. Their own people were scientists and scholars, evolved far beyond the primitive need for violence. But the Kethmoran lived only for conquest, their razor-sharp claws and acidic breath making them nearly unstoppable in combat. The intelligence reports confirmed it, added war strategist Nethvor, his compound eyes glowing with desperate hope. Humans spend their time cultivating plants, creating art, and composing music. They have no weapons beyond simple farming tools. They will be grateful for the chance to serve a higher purpose. Zexhai's chanting reached a crescendo as the summoning circle blazed with brilliant white light. The air itself seemed to tear apart, creating a swirling portal that hummed with otherworldly energy. Through the rift, they could see glimpses of a blue and green world, peaceful and serene. "Come forth, gentle beings of Terra Prime," Zexhai called out in the universal language. "Your empire has need of your service. Step through the portal and join our righteous cause." The first figure to emerge was tall and bipedal, wearing strange, camouflaged clothing. The human had short-cropped hair and moved with an odd, precise gait that the Vorthak immediately dismissed as awkwardness. Behind him came others, all wearing similar attire, their faces marked with what appeared to be ceremonial paint in green and black patterns. "Greetings, peaceful humans," Zexhai said, his translator device converting his words into what he assumed was their primitive language. "I am High Priest Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire. We have summoned you to assist us in our time of need." The lead human looked around the chamber with sharp, calculating eyes. His gaze lingered on the advanced technology, the floating platforms, and the nervous aliens surrounding them. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "I'm Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. This is my squad." He gestured to the dozen other humans who had emerged from the portal. "I'm going to need you to explain exactly what kind of assistance you're looking for." Zexhai was pleased by their apparent leader's polite response. "Excellent. You see, we are engaged in a defensive war against a savage species called the Kethmoran. They are violent, ruthless creatures who seek only destruction. We need soldiers to help protect our peaceful civilization." Rodriguez exchanged glances with his squad members. The aliens noticed several humans making strange gestures with their hands, but assumed it was some form of primitive communication ritual. "Let me get this straight," Rodriguez said slowly. "You pulled us through some kind of space portal because you're at war and you need fighters?" "Precisely, but do not worry," Zexhai assured them. "We will provide you with our advanced weapons and armor. Your people's natural gentleness will be an asset once properly directed. The Kethmoran will never expect such peaceful beings to stand against them." One of the younger humans, barely out of his teens, let out a sound that the Vorthak translator interpreted as distress. In reality, Private Johnson was trying very hard not to laugh. "When do we start?" Rodriguez asked, his expression unreadable. "Wonderful. Your enthusiasm proves our intelligence reports correct," Thys said, floating down from her platform. "We will begin your training immediately. First, you must understand that the Keth Moran are incredibly dangerous. They stand 3 meters tall, have natural armor plating, and possess strength far beyond any civilized being. Their claws can tear through solid metal. Sounds rough, Rodriguez replied. How have you been fighting them so far? We use energy weapons from a safe distance, Nethavor explained. Direct combat is impossible for civilized beings such as ourselves. We had hoped to develop robotic soldiers, but our programming cannot replicate the unpredictability needed for effective warfare. I see. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. And you picked humans because you think we're peaceful gardeners? Exactly. Your species has evolved beyond the need for violence, but with proper training and equipment, even the most gentle beings can be taught to defend themselves. We have prepared quarters for you in our training facility. As the Vorthak led them through gleaming corridors filled with advanced technology, the humans maintained their disciplined formation. The aliens pointed out various features of their civilization: art galleries, research laboratories, meditation gardens, all designed to impress their new recruits with Vorthak sophistication. This is impressive, Rodriguez admitted, genuinely awed by the technology around him. How long have you been at war with these Kethmaran? 3 years now, Zexhai replied sadly. They appeared from the Outer Rim and began attacking our colonies. We tried diplomatic solutions, of course, but they only understand violence. We lost 17 worlds before we were forced to fight back. The training facility was a marvel of alien engineering, with holographic combat simulators and weapons that fired concentrated energy beams. The Vorthak instructors began demonstrating the equipment, clearly expecting the humans to be overwhelmed by the advanced technology. These plasma rifles are our standard infantry weapons, explained Weapons Master Korthil. They can penetrate most materials and are quite simple to operate. Observe. He fired the weapon at a practice target, disintegrating it completely. The humans watched with what the aliens interpreted as amazement, though several were actually noting the weapon's slow recharge time and obvious design flaws. Now, we understand this may seem overwhelming, Korthil continued. Your primitive farming tools cannot have prepared you for such advanced technology. But do not worry. We will start with basic concepts and gradually build your skills. That's very thoughtful of you, Rodriguez said. Tell me, what's the maximum range on these weapons? Approximately 200 meters for accurate fire, Korthil replied proudly. Far superior to anything your species could have developed. Corporal Hayes whispered something to the Marine next to him that made the man's eyes widen slightly. The aliens, however, were too focused on their demonstration to notice. We've also prepared these ceremonial garments for you, announced Quartermaster Zelek, holding up a set of ornate robes. They will mark you as honored warriors of the Vorthak Empire. Actually, Rodriguez interjected politely, we'd prefer to keep our own uniforms if that's okay. They're kind of important to us. Of course. We respect your primitive customs, Zexhai said graciously. Now, tomorrow we will begin with basic combat theory. The Keth Moran attack in waves using their natural ferocity to overwhelm defensive positions. You will need to learn patience and discipline. We'll do our best, Rodriguez promised. That night, as the aliens retired to their quarters believing they had found the perfect cannon fodder, the Marines gathered in their assigned barracks. The room was luxurious by alien standards but felt sterile compared to what they were used to. Sir, whispered Corporal Hayes, are we really going to let them think we're a bunch of peaceful farmers? Rodriguez looked out the window at the alien city sprawling below them, its spires reaching toward unfamiliar stars. Hayes, these people are in real trouble. They're fighting for their lives against something that sounds genuinely nasty. If they want to underestimate what Marines can do, he smiled grimly. Well, I think we can give them a pleasant surprise. What about the others back home? Asked Private Johnson. They'll be looking for us. Command knows where we are, Rodriguez assured him. That portal works both ways, and I saw our GPS coordinates get transmitted before we came through. Right now, our job is to assess the situation and help these people if we can. Sergeant Williams, the squad's heavy weapons specialist, was examining the plasma rifle they'd been given to study. Sir, this weapon is a joke. Single shot, 3-second recharge time, and it probably overheats after a dozen rounds. My grandmother could design better small arms. That's not the point, Williams. They're doing the best they can with what they have. The question is, what can we do with what we have? The next morning brought their first glimpse of actual combat footage from the war. The Vorthak showed them recordings of Kethmoran attacks, apparently hoping to prepare their new recruits for what they would face. The Kethmoran were indeed terrifying creatures, reptilian bipeds with natural armor plating, extending claws, and acid breath that could melt through metal. They moved with predatory grace and fought with savage intelligence, coordinating their attacks while individual warriors tore through Vorthak defensive lines like paper. As you can see, Nethvor explained, they are formidable opponents. This is why we need soldiers who think differently than we do. Your peaceful nature will allow you to approach problems from angles we cannot conceive. Rodriguez watched the footage carefully, his tactical mind already working. They rely on close combat and intimidation. What's their effective range with that acid breath? Approximately 10 meters, Nethvor replied. Why do you ask? Just curious about their capabilities. Rodriguez exchanged another look with his squad. These training weapons you've given us, are they similar to what we'll use in actual combat? Identical, Korthil confirmed proudly. We believe in thorough preparation. Good to know. Rodriguez stood up from his seat. Would it be possible to see the actual battlefield, get a feel for the terrain where we'll be fighting? The aliens were impressed by what they saw as unexpected tactical thinking from a peaceful species. An excellent suggestion. We will arrange transport to the contested zone immediately. As they prepared for their first field trip to an active war zone, none of the Vorthak noticed the way the humans moved with practiced efficiency, checking their gear with the automatic precision of professional soldiers. They were too busy congratulating themselves on finding such cooperative and thoughtful farmers. The transport ship lifted off smoothly, carrying 13 humans toward a battle that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the species from Terra Prime. First contact with war. The transport ship. Peaceful dawn descended through the atmosphere of Kethvar Prime, a contested world on the front lines of the war. Through the viewports, the humans could see the devastation below. Once beautiful Vorthak cities reduced to rubble, their crystalline spires shattered and smoking. This was one of our most important agricultural worlds, Zexhai explained sadly as they flew over the wasteland. The Kethmoran destroyed everything, even the farms that could have fed their own people. They seemed to take pleasure in destruction itself. Rodriguez studied the tactical situation through the ship's sensors. The Vorthak had established a defensive perimeter around their remaining strongholds, but their lines were thin and poorly coordinated. Their soldiers maintained excessive distances from each other, clearly terrified of close combat. "Where exactly are we landing?" he asked. "Forward Operating Base Harmony," replied the pilot, a nervous Vorthak named Kilmte. "It's our primary staging area for defensive operations in this sector. You'll be meeting with Field Commander Vextor, who will brief you on current tactical situations." As they approached the base, the humans could see it was more like a research station than a military installation. The defenses were entirely energy-based, shield generators and automated turrets with no physical barriers or prepared positions for infantry combat. "Interesting setup," muttered Corporal Hayes. The landing pad was surrounded by Vorthak soldiers wearing elaborate energy armor that glowed with protective fields. Their weapons were bulky energy rifles that required both hands to operate effectively. Despite their advanced technology, they moved with the awkward uncertainty of beings who had never truly embraced warfare. Field Commander Vextor greeted them personally, his 4 arms spread in what the humans learned was a gesture of welcome. "Greetings, brave humans. I am honored to meet the warriors who will help us turn the tide of this conflict." "Thank you for having us, Commander," Rodriguez replied. "We're here to learn and assist however we can." "Excellent. First, you must understand the tactical situation." Vextor led them to a command center filled with holographic displays showing troop movements and battle reports. "The Kethmoran have established 3 major strongholds on this world. Our attempts to dislodge them have been unsuccessful." The battle reports made for grim reading. Every Vorthak offensive had been repelled with heavy casualties, usually because their soldiers broke and ran when the Kethmoran charged their positions. The aliens simply couldn't overcome their psychological aversion to violence, even when their survival depended on it. "What's your current strategy?" Rodriguez asked. "We maintain defensive positions and attempt to wear them down through attrition," Vextor explained. "Our energy weapons have superior range, so we try to engage them from a distance where their natural advantages cannot come into play." "How's that working out?" "Not particularly well. They've adapted their tactics to approach undercover, and once they close the distance, our soldiers find it difficult to maintain coherent defensive lines." Rodriguez nodded diplomatically. What he was seeing was a complete breakdown of military doctrine. The Vorthak had advanced technology, but no understanding of how to use it effectively in combat. Their soldiers were essentially armed civilians with no real training or fighting spirit. "Would it be possible to observe one of these defensive actions?" he asked. "Actually, our sensors indicate a Kethmoran scouting party approaching Outpost 7. It would be an excellent opportunity for you to observe their tactics firsthand." Vextor's enthusiasm was evident. "Don't worry, you'll be safely positioned behind our energy barriers." The flight to Outpost 7 gave the Marines their first close look at Kethmoran forces. Through the transport's scopes, they could see the alien warriors moving through the broken terrain with predatory efficiency. Each creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, their reptilian skin covered in natural armor plates that gleamed with an oily sheen. "They're impressive," Rodriguez admitted to his squad over their comm system, "but they're not invincible." "Sir, they move like pack hunters," observed Sergeant Williams. "Coordinated, but they're relying on intimidation and overwhelming force rather than sophisticated tactics." "Noted. Keep watching and learning." Outpost 7 was a typical Vorthak defensive position, a cluster of buildings surrounded by energy shields and automated defense turrets. 20 Vorthak soldiers manned the perimeter, their weapons charged and ready. The humans were positioned on an observation platform with an excellent view of the approaching battlefield. "The engagement should begin shortly," explained the outpost commander, a veteran named Kortul, whose many battle scars marked him as one of the few Vorthak who had survived multiple encounters with the enemy. "Our sensors show 12 Kethmoran warriors approaching from the eastern ridge." The attack began exactly as the tactical reports had described. The Kethmoran emerged from cover in a coordinated rush, their acid breath weapons already glowing as they prepared to dissolve the Vorthak defensive barriers. The aliens' energy weapons opened fire immediately, their purple beams striking several attackers but failing to stop their advance. What happened next horrified the human observers, but not for the reasons the Vorthak expected. As the Kethmoran closed to within 50 meters, the Vorthak defensive line began to waver. Individual soldiers started backing away from their positions, their return fire becoming sporadic and poorly aimed. When the first Kethmoran warrior crashed through a weakened section of energy barrier, the entire defense collapsed. Vorthak soldiers fled in all directions, abandoning their weapons and equipment as they ran for the imagined safety of the transport vehicles. The Keth didn't even need to press their attack. They simply walked into the abandoned outpost and began destroying everything they could find. "This is what we face," Cordell said bitterly as they watched his soldiers retreat in disorder. "Superior technology means nothing when your people cannot stand and fight." Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, watching the Keth systematically demolish the outpost below. Finally, he turned to the alien commander. "Commander, with respect, your people aren't cowards. You're just fighting the wrong kind of war." "I don't understand." "You're trying to fight like humans, standing in lines, exchanging fire with the enemy until someone breaks. But that's not what your people are built for." Rodriguez gestured toward the tactical display. "Your soldiers are scientists and engineers. They think in terms of systems and solutions, not violence and aggression." "But how else can one fight a war?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "There are other ways, but first I need to ask you something important. How much do you really know about human military capabilities?" Cordell looked confused. "You are peaceful farmers and artists. That is why we summoned you. Your gentle nature combined with proper training would create ideal soldiers." "Right. And who exactly told you that humans were peaceful farmers?" "The Galactic Information Networks. Your species is listed as Class 7. Minimal technological development, no significant military capability, primary activities include agriculture and primitive crafts." Rodriguez turned to his squad, and for the first time since their arrival, he allowed himself to grin. "Did you hear that, Marines? We're primitive farmers." The laughter that erupted from his squad sent chills down Cordell's spine, though he couldn't understand why. There was something predatory in that sound, something that spoke of violence and death and terrible, terrible competence. "Commander," Rodriguez said, turning back to the alien officer, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what humans actually do for a living." Over the next several hours, Rodriguez carefully explained the reality of human military development to an increasingly stunned audience of Vorthok officers. He told them about standing armies and professional soldiers, about weapons designed for no purpose other than killing, about the thousands of years of warfare that had shaped human civilization. "You're saying your entire species has been engaged in continuous warfare since your recorded history began?" Vextor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not continuous, but frequent enough that we got good at it. Very, very good at it." Rodriguez pulled up his squad's service records on a portable device. "Every one of my Marines has been in combat multiple times. We train constantly. We study warfare as both an art and a science, and we've been perfecting our methods for killing things for several thousand years. But the galactic databases are apparently wrong. Dead wrong." Rodriguez looked out at the devastated landscape below them. "The question now is, do you want our help, or do you want us to go home and let you handle this yourselves?" The Vorthak officers exchanged glances that spoke of desperate hope mixed with dawning terror. They had summoned what they thought were sheep and found themselves with wolves instead. What would you need from us?" Cordell asked carefully. "Give us real intelligence on enemy positions, troop strengths and capabilities. Get your people out of our way when we work, and most importantly," Rodriguez's expression grew serious, "trust us to do what we do best, which is break things and kill people who need killing." The silence that followed was broken by an alarm klaxon echoing through the command center. A communications officer looked up from his station with fear in his compound eyes. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting a major Keth assault force moving toward Base Harmony. Estimated strength, over 200 warriors with heavy support weapons. Estimated time to contact, 6 hours. Vextor's face went pale. 200? That's more than our entire garrison can handle. We'll have to evacuate. Or, Rodriguez said quietly, You could let 13 Marines show you what human farmers can really do." The Vorthak command staff looked at each other with expressions that mixed hope and disbelief. In the distance, warning sirens began to wail as their sensors detected the approaching enemy force. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," Vextor said formally, "the Vorthak Empire would be honored by your assistance." Rodriguez nodded and turned to his squad. "Marines, it looks like we've got work to do." For the first time since their arrival, the humans stopped pretending to be harmless. The transformation was immediate and terrifying to witness. Their casual, almost lazy demeanor vanished, replaced by the focused intensity of apex predators preparing for a hunt. "Sir," Corporal Hayes said, checking his equipment, "what's our mission parameters?" "Defend the base, neutralize the threat, and try not to give our hosts nightmares." Rodriguez looked back at the aliens who were watching them with growing amazement and fear. "Time to show them why humans don't have any natural predators." As the Marines began their preparations, the Vorthak finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. They had not summoned peaceful farmers to serve as cannon fodder. They had summoned death itself. The storm unleashed. The transformation of forward operating base Harmony began immediately. Rodriguez had given his Marines 2 hours to prepare for the incoming assault, and they used every minute with frightening efficiency. "Williams, Hayes, I want you two on overwatch positions," Rodriguez ordered, pointing to the base's highest towers. "Johnson, Martinez, you're with me on the main defensive line. The rest of you, start setting up fields of fire and fallback positions." The Vorthak watched in fascination as the humans moved through their base, completely ignoring the sophisticated energy weapons, and instead focusing on basic tactical principles that the aliens had never considered. The Marines identified choke points, established overlapping fields of fire, and began constructing improvised barriers from whatever materials they could find. "What are they doing?" Vextor asked Cordell as they observed the humans dragging heavy equipment crates into strategic positions. "I believe they're fortifying," Cordell replied uncertainly. "But why ignore our shield generators and automated defenses?" Rodriguez overheard the question and paused in his work. "Because energy shields fail, Commander. When they do, you need something solid between you and the people trying to kill you." He gestured toward the Marines who were methodically creating defensive positions. "We're not just preparing to fight them. We're preparing to win." Sergeant Williams was on the eastern tower, examining the approaching terrain through the scope of a borrowed Vorthak energy rifle. Despite his earlier criticism of the weapon, he had quickly adapted to its quirks and limitations. More importantly, he was applying 3 decades of combat experience to identify the most likely enemy approaches. "Sir," he called down to Rodriguez over their comm system, "I've got eyes on the enemy force. They're moving in 3 columns, approximately 60 to 70 warriors each. They'll reach the perimeter in 40 minutes. Dispositions? Classic pincer movement, but sloppy. They're relying on intimidation rather than tactical sophistication. I count maybe a dozen of what look like heavy weapons, some kind of organic artillery that spits acid. Range appears to be about 300 meters. Rodriguez nodded and turned to the gathering crowd of Vorthak officers. "Gentlemen, you're about to see something that hasn't happened in this war yet. You're about to see Kethmoran warriors run away from a fight." "That's impossible," Vextor protested. "They don't retreat, ever. It's not in their nature." "Everything retreats when it's hurt badly enough," Rodriguez replied grimly. "The trick is hurting them badly enough." As the enemy force approached, the Vorthak soldiers who remained at the base gathered on the observation platforms, unwilling to abandon their posts, but equally unwilling to engage in direct combat. From their elevated position, they could see the Kethmoran warriors moving through the devastated landscape like a tide of death. The aliens were even more impressive up close than they had appeared in the tactical recordings. Each warrior stood 3 meters tall, their reptilian hides scarred by countless battles. They moved with coordinated precision, their natural weapons glowing with barely contained energy. Most terrifying of all was the sound they made, a low harmonic growling that seemed to resonate in the bones of anyone who heard it. "My God," whispered one of the younger Vorthak officers. "How can 13 beings stand against such a force?" His answer came in the form of Williams's voice crackling over the base's communication system. "Contact! Enemy lead elements at 800 meters and closing. Sir, they're bunching up nicely in that valley approach." Rodriguez smiled coldly. "Outstanding! All positions, remember your training. Let them get close before you open fire. Make every shot count." The Kethmaran advance was a thing of terrible beauty. The three columns moved with predatory grace, their warriors communicating through complex pheromone signals that coordinated their approach without the need for vulnerable electronic communications. They had used this same tactic to overwhelm dozens of Vorthak positions, relying on speed and ferocity to break enemy morale before engaging in actual combat. But as they approached forward operating base Harmony, something was different. The usual panicked energy weapon fire didn't materialize. The base's automated defenses remained silent. There were no frantic communications between defensive positions, no signs of the fear and confusion that always preceded Vorthak collapse. In fact, there was no response at all. The lead Kethmaran warriors slowed their advance, their enhanced senses detecting an anomaly they couldn't identify. The base ahead of them looked abandoned, its energy barriers down and its weapon systems inactive. It should have been an easy victory, but their instincts warned them that something was wrong. They were 300 meters from the perimeter when the first shot rang out. Williams's carefully aimed blast from the modified Vorthak energy rifle struck the lead warrior center mass, the alien's natural armor absorbing most of the impact but still staggering the massive creature. Before it could recover, a second shot from Hayes's position on the western tower caught it in the head, dropping it permanently. The Kethmaran response was immediate and devastating. Acid artillery began raining down on the base, while the surviving warriors charged forward in a coordinated assault. Their battle roar echoed across the battlefield as they closed the distance with terrifying speed. But the Marines were ready. Rodriguez and his ground team opened fire from concealed positions, their shots carefully coordinated to create overlapping fields of fire that channeled the charging aliens into predetermined kill zones. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, firing and repositioning with a speed that left their alien observers stunned. "Impossible," breathed Vextor as he watched Rodriguez personally engage 3 Kethmaran warriors simultaneously, using the base's infrastructure to break line of sight while picking off his targets one by one. No Vorthak soldier could survive such close combat. The battle raged for 20 minutes that felt like hours. The Kethmaran warriors, accustomed to facing terrified Vorthak defenders, found themselves engaged with an enemy that fought back with lethal competence. Every time they tried to exploit what appeared to be a weakness in the human defenses, they walked into carefully prepared ambushes. Corporal Hayes watched through his scope as a group of warriors attempted to flank their position through the eastern approach. His voice was calm and professional as he reported the contact. 6 hostiles moving through Sector 7, taking them under fire. His shots were precise and economical, each blast carefully placed to maximize damage while conserving ammunition. The aliens' natural armor was tough, but the Marines had quickly learned to target joints and sensory organs where the protection was thinner. The turning point came when Sergeant Williams spotted the enemy commander, a massive Kethmaran warrior whose scales bore the scars of 100 battles. The creature was directing the assault from a position behind the main force, its pheromone signals coordinating the attack with tactical precision. "Rodriguez, I've got their field commander at bearing 270, range 400 meters. Permission to engage?" "Granted. Take him down." Williams had modified his energy rifle with components scavenged from the base's workshop, increasing its range and accuracy at the cost of rate of fire. His shot was perfect. striking the enemy commander in the central nervous cluster and dropping the massive alien instantly. The effect on the Kethmoran force was immediate and dramatic. Without their commander's pheromone coordination, the assault began to fragment. Individual warriors continued fighting with savage determination, but their tactical coordination collapsed. Rodriguez seized the moment. All positions concentrate fire on the heavy weapons. Break their artillery support. The Marines shifted their focus to the acid-spitting biocannons that had been providing covering fire for the assault. These weapons were larger and less mobile than individual warriors, making them easier targets for sustained fire. One by one, the organic artillery fell silent as precisely aimed energy blasts found their mark. With their command structure destroyed and their heavy support eliminated, the remaining Kethmoran warriors found themselves trapped in a killing field with no clear way forward and no effective way to retreat. For the first time in the war, they began to show signs of uncertainty. "They're wavering," Hayes reported from his overwatch position. "I can see groups of them pulling back from the perimeter." "Keep the pressure on," Rodriguez ordered. "Don't give them time to reorganize." The final phase of the battle was a systematic elimination of the remaining threats. The Marines moved through the base's defensive positions like choreographed dancers, each supporting the others in a display of tactical coordination that left the watching Vorthak speechless. When the last Kethmoran warrior fell, an eerie silence settled over the battlefield. Smoke rose from the alien corpses scattered across the approaches to the base, and the acrid smell of discharged energy weapons hung in the air like incense. Rodriguez stood up from his position behind an overturned equipment crate, his borrowed energy rifle still warm from continuous use. Around him, his Marines were already beginning the post-battle routine, checking for wounded, securing weapons, and preparing defensive positions for possible counterattacks. "Sir," Williams called from his tower position, "sensors show all hostiles down. No movement detected in the area." "Roger that. Stay alert for stragglers." Rodriguez turned to face the crowd of Vorthak officers who had watched the entire engagement from their observation platforms. Their expressions ranged from awe to terror, with several looking as though they were reconsidering everything they thought they knew about the universe. 13, Vextor said quietly. 13 of your people just destroyed a force that would have required our entire planetary garrison to engage. Actually, Rodriguez corrected, 13 Marines just did what Marines do. This wasn't exceptional for us. This was Tuesday. Cordell approached cautiously, his multiple arms trembling slightly. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I must ask, are all human soldiers like you?" Rodriguez considered the question seriously. "My Marines are good, but they're not unique. There are millions of others just like them. Better, in some cases." "Millions?" "Oh, yes. And we've been fighting wars a lot longer than you've been fighting the Kethmoran. We've got this whole violence thing pretty well figured out." The implications of his words settled over the alien officers like a heavy blanket. They had summoned what they thought were peaceful farmers and discovered that humans were potentially the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "What happens now?" Vextor asked. Rodriguez looked out at the battlefield where the bodies of 200 Kethmoran warriors lay scattered like fallen leaves. In the distance, more smoke rose from the alien strongholds that his Marines would soon be visiting. "Now," Rodriguez smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Now we finish what they started." High Priest Zexhai received the battle report while he was conducting evening meditation in his private chambers. The holographic display showed the tactical summary in stark, simple terms. Human force of 13 individuals had successfully defended forward operating base Harmony against a Kethmoran assault force of 200-plus warriors. Enemy casualties, complete. Human casualties, 0. He read the report 3 times before accepting that it was real. When he finally contacted Earth through the still-open portal, his message was brief and desperate. "This is High Priest Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire. We need to discuss terms for a formal military alliance, immediately." The response from Earth's military command was equally brief. "We'll send a negotiator, along with a few more Marines." In the depths of space, the Kethmoran High Command received fragmented reports of a devastating defeat at a minor Vorthak outpost. The reports made no sense. Their warriors didn't retreat, and they certainly didn't lose entire assault forces to a handful of defenders. But the reports kept coming, and they all mentioned the same thing: humans. The galaxy was about to learn what the Vorthak had discovered the hard way. When you summon humans to fight your wars, you don't get obedient farmers. You get Earth's finest warriors, and they come with 4,000 years of military evolution behind them.